Welcome to the video, guys. There has been an update regarding the Brexit situation and our apparent trade deal with the EU, which it seems is not going to happen. And there is an update suggesting that the EU is sinking itself with its attempts to deal with the coronavirus situation and the insane amount of money they are throwing around in these bailouts. First, we will take a look at this Express article that headlines Brexit trade deal with the EU on the brink of collapse as Brussels won't change its stance. Boris Johnson has been warned the European Union will not back down from their ultra-aggressive stance in post-Brexit trade talks, in a move that could trigger the collapse of a deal and cause huge damage. Well, I don't know about that, given, like I said, the shit show going on in the EU. I'm pretty sure doing a deal with them might actually do us more damage than a WTO Brexit. The Prime Minister successfully renegotiated key parts of Theresa May's doomed withdrawal agreement with the European Union towards the end of last year. Yes, he essentially made it a Brexit in name only slightly better than Theresa May's document. But since then, luckily, he gained an 80-seat majority and has moved to a more hardline stance. The new withdrawal agreement included small amendments to the Irish backstop, an issue that was a thorn in the side of the former leader's chances of getting her deal through the UK Parliament. Boris Johnson had no such problems, using the Conservative Party's huge 80-seat majority gained in December's general election to get his amended withdrawal agreement voted through by MPs and deliver on his promise to get Brexit done on January 31st. The UK and EU trade talks got underway in March, but any post-Brexit agreement is already under serious threat of collapse. Both sides have traded vicious blows and insults over their respective negotiating stances, with huge cracks widening from bitter disagreements over a number of crucial demands being made in the post-Brexit agreement, which obviously the EU are demanding some ridiculous things, as we all know, like fisheries, control over our laws, and of course the nonsensical level playing field, which cannot be allowed to happen because it's not Brexit. The Prime Minister continues to insist he wants a trade deal signed with Brussels before the end of the transition period, and is refusing to ask for an extension beyond the December 31st deadline. This has added even more tension to proceedings and infuriated the EU, with Brussels warning that the tight deadline leaves no time to get a comprehensive deal in place, which is a good thing, as I've said many times before. We all wanted a WTO Brexit before this situation cropped up we find ourselves in now, and given, like I've said, the disaster that is going to happen to the EU, as we will see in a moment, we certainly don't want to be any part of it. So WTO Brexit all the way. This has added even more tension to proceedings and infuriated the EU. Good. With Brussels warning the tight deadline leaves no time to get a comprehensive deal in place. Well, you either give us the deal that we want or we leave on WTO terms. That is the way it is at the moment. We will benefit from being on WTO terms and avoiding any responsibility for the massive debts the EU countries have taken on. Following the latest round of negotiations, the UK's chief Brexit negotiator David Frost warned the EU and his counterpart Michel Barnier to change their stance in a number of areas before the next round of talks on June 1st. No, David Frost, don't tell them to do that. Let them continue on this same way and we'll take WTO. They will come running shortly after. This you can guarantee. But Professor Alex de Rutter, Director of the Centre for Brexit Studies at Birmingham City University, has issued a chilling warning to Mr Johnson and his negotiating team. He told Express.co.uk, will the EU change its current position? The presupposes that both sides have equal bargaining power. They don't. The UK is a middle-sized economy with about 65 million people. The EU is a trade bloc with a population of about 450 million. So no, I don't expect the EU to change their stance. Is this guy actually for real? Is he forgetting that the UK is the 5th largest economy in the world? How do you consider that a middle-sized economy? The amount of people here is irrelevant. We are talking about economic power here. We are a little country with 65 million people. That is number 5 in the world for our economy. So how on earth have you come to that? And what the actual fuck are you a professor of? Because you're an idiot. It's common knowledge that the UK is the 5th largest economy in the world, with America being number 1. We're doing a trade deal with them, remember. We are not some mid-sized shit-kicker economy, as this anti-British wankstain is trying to claim. If we look at the key areas of disagreement, fisheries and so-called level playing field provisions, fishing, whilst a totemic issue for the UK, despite its trivial economic contribution at about 0.1% of our GDP, it is also equally totemic for EU countries, with equally strong maritime traditions. The Netherlands, France, Spain, Denmark, for example. And no one cares whether it's a totemic issue for any of these countries. It's British waters at the end of the day. That is all that matters. We are a sovereign country and they are our sovereign waters. The EU can get stuffed. Regarding the EU insisting on the UK abiding by level playing field provisions around, for example, labour laws, state aid and environmental standards, this is an existential issue for the EU in that an ex-member state cannot be seen to extract favourable concessions on single market access. Least other EU countries, such as Poland and Hungary, kick off and start demanding similar treatment. Well, if they want similar treatment, they better leave the EU. Simple as that. Go out on your own and leave the EU to fend for itself. I'm sure it will come running if you have anything to offer. At this point, the whole single market really could unravel. Tim Bale, Deputy Director of the UK in a Change in Europe think tank and Professor of Politics at the Queen Mary University of London, said that while the EU could relent on some aspects of the trade deal, Brussels will not start handing out favourable terms to a country that is no longer a member state. That's fine, we'll happily take WTO. It's the EU and all those Ramonas running around out there that really want this deal to be done. Because, obviously, we know the EU desperately needs our money and to keep us aligned with them. I expect if we're under the European Courts of Justice jurisdiction, then they will be able to take some money off us some way or another, likely by changing laws that would force us to take part. We all have to remember money is one of the most important things for the European Union. It produces absolutely fuck all. The independent nation states do that, and the EU just takes a slice. He told this website this is a negotiation. The EU will make concessions in some areas, maybe even on something contentious like fishing. But what it won't compromise on is the principle that you don't get to enjoy most of the benefits of belonging to the EU once you're no longer a member state. From what I can tell, they are not what we're asking for. We're just asking for a bog standard free trade agreement like they have with other countries, as I pointed out when I covered an article the other day, and should really be common knowledge at this point. But if you ask me, it's absolutely fine the EU holding the hardline stance, as I'm sure you would agree. We will literally take a no-deal Brexit right now, in the middle of this shit show if necessary. Anything to keep us away from paying the EU or ending up stuck as part of the European Union, but not in there technically, because remember, that is exactly what the Maybot deal essentially was, and as you all know, what Nicola Sturgeon wants. She wants to be an independent Scotland, but the vassal state of the European Union, as Maybot tried to do to us, remember. Now, as I said earlier, aside from the trade deal, that looks like it might well end as a WTO Brexit. The EU is also shooting itself in the foot with the help of Angela Merkel and the French pussy Emmanuel Macron, because they were shut down by the BBC host on their Hard Talk show, who rightly pointed out that the EU is sitting on a ticking time bomb thanks to Merkel and Macron, and destroys the EU shitweasel claim that people want more independence from America and China, when in actual fact people of Europe, it seems, are more likely to want independence from Brussels than they are from the US or China, though independence from China is obviously a good thing given what has happened. But the Express article headlines, BBC host shut down French minister as Brussels power grab sparks revolt. BBC political presenter Stephen Secours has ripped into the plan set out by Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel to rescue the EU, claiming they are sitting on a ticking time bomb. The BBC Hard Talk presenter has savaged the huge EU bailout fund laid out by France and Germany, claiming they are creating a time bomb for the bloc's future, which is music to my ears, and I'm sure something that will make all of my viewers happy, unless of course you're an EU shitweasel or a Ramonin spunk trumpet. You know the sort, we've dealt with them for years. This week, Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel unveiled an unprecedented £448 billion recovery fund for the countries worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic, which I covered at the time. However, the plan sparked fury from the so-called Frugal Four, composed of Austria, Denmark, the Netherlands and Sweden, who formally rejected Macron and Merkel's bailout on Saturday, which I covered at the time when these countries were saying they weren't part of it. It seems they've actually fully rejected it now, and if memory serves, they've actually put forward their own one, though details on it at the time of recording are still pretty scarce. And rather than me reading what was actually said during the interview, I think we have a little clip of it here, so we'll take a look at that.
I may be absolutely convinced of this, but I wonder if all of the French people are, let alone the people of Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, Sweden, Denmark, and a host of other countries. Let me read to you an interesting thought from the Financial Times' chief foreign affairs commentator Gideon Rachman the other day. He wrote, "The mutualization of debt within the EU has always been the reddest of red lines for the German people, the Dutch, the Austrians, the Finns and others. If it is pushed through now in this atmosphere of crisis, it could set a time bomb under the EU." Because there will be a backlash, won't there?
I don't share that point of view. I think that a large majority of European citizens want to go the way of more independence and more sovereignty. They don't want to be dependent anymore on China or on the United States. They want to be independent. And if we want to be independent, if we want to have our own technologies once again, which is the key point for the 21st century, then we need to gather our efforts. And I want to be very clear that the idea is not to provide money without any conditions. The idea is just to support some of the member states for the sake of having a quicker and stronger economic recovery after the crisis. That's the idea behind that.
So in that clip, you see the BBC host perfectly point out the fact that the people of these respective European nations are not going to be happy about taking on other people's debt, as I have complained about many times, if we was to remain in the EU via some ridiculous deal that makes us the vassal state of Europe, as Maybot wanted. You heard him say that the people of these countries will not be very happy about it, and the EU will be sitting on a ticking time bomb. Before, of course, this snivelling shitweasel from the EU tries to turn it around and make out like he's talking about breaking away from the US and China, when there is growing sentiment in the EU that these people certainly want to break away from Brussels itself, which he tries to deny. But much like our political leaders and most media outlets around the country, this idiot actually thinks worrying about what urban centres want is actually what really matters to an individual country, or in the EU's case, the bloc itself. We have already found out with the election last year that the urban centres are not in touch with the rest of the country, and if that is the case, people who think like that will certainly lose elections, and while they're in power, they will only further piss the people of these countries off. So, ticking time bomb is actually the correct thing to say from this BBC presenter. It's not often you'll hear me praising what a BBC presenter says, but he seems to be spot on right now. Though, as you heard him say, he is actually quoting from a Financial Times reporter. Now, I don't know about you guys, but what he was talking about independence sounded to me like the SNP's version of independence. The people of Europe want independence from everyone else but the European Union. In this guy's eyes, and of course the SNP's, everyone loves being the vassal state of the EU. Obviously, if what the BBC host is talking about is true, and what is hinted at in the article we looked at before it actually comes to pass, then not only could a WTO Brexit be very much on the cards, but it could also help signal the end of the European Union that, like I said, will shoot itself in the foot with the stupid shit that it's doing. But on that note, guys, I am going to end the video there. Now, before I go, I've started doing live streams and uploading gaming content on my second channel. if you would like to come and join me for a live stream to chat in real time, have an interest in gaming related content on YouTube, or just want to follow me over there because you are a legend, the link will be down in the video description below and as a pinned comment. I hope to see you all there. Now as always, before I go, I want to thank our PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar and YouTube members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. Slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going and we are glad to be going. We're off.